My point here is to tell you about some interactive projects that I have done with my listeners that I think, on the one hand, are the future of digital literacy. That's what my audience is getting out of it. But I also think that they are very interesting ways of explaining how the audience is changing and what they're willing to do. Radio, sort of a passive thing. You literally broadcast and announce things to them. Not anymore. Now this is about having a conversation with your listeners. So I host a show that's called Note to Self. It comes from WNYC. That is the largest public radio station in the United States, New York Public Radio. We are not the same as NPR. NPR is sort of the mothership. We are one of their children, so to speak, their biggest one. And this is a weekly show that comes out. It is actually a tech show. We used to call it New Tech City. Very interesting little side note here. 70% of our audience was male when we were called New Tech City. But as we started to get more into the sociological side, more of how humans are being affected by tech, we decided to change the name to Note to Self. And now our audience is 70% women, which is very interesting. So what I want to talk about, well, really the point of my show is I really think that we have to understand how we use technology better, because when we understand how we use it, why your phone is in your hand right now, we can understand ourselves so much better, and we can use those lessons to live better, smarter, maybe even kinder lives. That is my goal. So I know a little bit about you. This is my Twitter handle. I think it's actually pretty accurate. I talk about digital quandaries. I was a reporter at the BBC and at Reuters Television. I have 2 children. I have a politics reporter husband who's taking care of those 2 children right now. And I am prone to anxiety, which has actually served me incredibly well in the podcast sphere, because it turns out vulnerability is a key thing when you are a podcaster. It is about creating that intimate relationship with your listener, as many of you know. And so what I'm going to talk about now is what can audience-driven audio look like? And I really want to encourage you to, yeah, it's great if you take one thing away from me today, but really it's more important that you take one idea from yourself out of this session. Really think about a little, where are you in this space? What have you learned so far? Where are you hoping to go with all you've learned? And I hope that in this session, you put your phone away and you sort of open yourself up to start having some ideas. Pull it out to jot down your ideas. That's acceptable. I'll take that. So this is sort of the cycle that I'm looking to get to as I explain to you the 3 projects that I have done. So I want to start out with your phone. This is a personal story because that's what podcasts always have to be. And of course, radio, the best thing it does is tell stories, right? So a few years ago, I sat down to sort of brainstorm some big ideas for the show. How are we going to take the show up a notch? How am I going to reach new audiences? What am I going to do next with my team? And I came up blank. And it wasn't like writer's block where if I could just push through. No, it wasn't like that. There was just nothing there. And so I thought back, I was like, well, when have I had my best thoughts? And it was such a cliche. It was like in the shower, staring out the window on a long car ride, those times when I was really just letting myself go, when I was really kind of bored. And now I realized, clicker, that I was always looking at my phone, no matter where I was. The minute I didn't have to do something or speak to someone or, even at the gym, I was looking at my phone. And it kind of occurred to me that maybe I had not been bored since I got my first phone. Fun fact for you, my son and the iPhone were born the same month, June in 2007. I think that there's something to that. So I started to wonder, could there be any consequences to never getting bored, ever? If I never let my mind wander, could I be missing on something? And that's the beauty of being a journalist, right? I could reach out to the people who could give me this answer. So I started interviewing neuroscientists and cognitive psychologists, and they told me that, yes, I could be missing out on things. Because it turns out that when we get bored, what happens is we light up a network in our brain called the default mode. This is when you're folding the laundry and your mind kind of goes, or you're just kind of lounging around. And what happens when we're in the default mode is your body is kind of not really working hard. There's no real connection there, but your brain has its most original thoughts. It does its best problem solving. It does something called autobiographical planning, which is when you look back at what's happened in your life, you make sort of mental notes about the lessons that you've learned, and then you apply those lessons to where you want to go forward. So this made me think, well, what if we used our phones differently? Could we activate our default mode more often on purpose? If we did that, could we jumpstart our creativity? What could happen if we embraced being bored? Could we help ourselves have bigger ideas and change the way we think? Could we even get brilliant? So we turned it into a project. We called it the Bored and Brilliant Project. And the scientific research on how technology is affecting our behavior is extremely preliminary. So what I originally was going to do was sort of report to my audience what we knew. But then I saw, there wasn't really any research on this. So I was like, well, audience, how about we do our own research? And basically, I reached out to them and I said, are you interested in this? I think this is something interesting. I'm not really sure entirely. Boy, did they react. They really wanted to take part. And thousands of people started signing up. And they told me that the reasons they were doing it was interesting reasons. One was they wanted to be more productive. They felt like they were wasting time on their phone. Secondly, they felt addicted to their technology. Thirdly, they were worried about their health. But they also wanted data, because that's what audiences want these days, right? So the first thing we did is we asked them to download an app. This was Break Free for Android, Moment for iOS. And what these apps did was measure how many times a day you picked up your phone to look at it. Quite frightening. And how many minutes a day you spent on your phone. So before challenge week, we needed baseline data. And this was our average. Our average was just over 2 hours a day on our phones with over 60 pickups a day. Now, I think this is actually pretty low. By some estimates, people check their phones an average of 150 times a day. That research has not been verified, but I think this is an audience that's pretty self-aware, so maybe that's why it's on the lower side. And then this is how it worked. Every day for 1 week, they would wake up, there would be a newsletter waiting in their inbox. That newsletter would have a challenge, a task for them to try for the day. And then it would also have a corresponding short podcast with an interview with the science, the technology behind what we were asking people to do. So on day 1, we called it Put It in Your Pocket. This was get your phone away from your body. Try to break that reflex of walking into an elevator and immediately looking at your phone, which is what so many of us realized we were doing. This was actually from day 3. People said this was the hardest challenge. It was called Delete That App. We asked people to delete the app that was keeping them up at night. That one app? Come on, that one app, right? So people deleted Angry Birds, they deleted Instagram, Twitter, Candy Crush. Mine was 2 Dots. Are there any 2 Dots players in here? Oh my God, right? It's the worst, completely. Yeah, my husband was like, could you just get rid of it, please? And I did. So it was great. At the end of the week, though, this is what we accomplished. Yeah, we shaved off an average of 6 minutes a day. And I was like, what? That's it? After all the stuff we put our audience through, all we did was shave off 6 minutes per day? But when I reported this number back to the scientists, they literally laughed at me. They were like, do you know how hard it is to change people's behavior and their habits in 5 days? Are you insane? They were like, what about the stories? And yeah, what I realized was that week was just baby steps. We were just getting started in trying to change our behavior, right? In our relationship to our phone. And then talking to people, we heard them saying things like, oops, I want to go back. I feel like I'm becoming myself again for the first time in years. I pick up my guitars more, I go to bed earlier, I sleep better, I'm happier. My friends can't believe I don't have Facebook on my phone anymore. I can't believe I did it for so long. One guy wrote me, this is my favorite quote, I feel like I'm waking up from a mental hibernation. People's lives were profoundly changed. But I have to say, what I found the most gratifying was the reaction from teenagers. We had classrooms across the country do this together, in part. And I want to just play you a clip from one teacher. This is Joel Adams at Stanton College Prep, if we could play that.
All right, everyone. So last week, we talked about the Bored and Brilliant project. How many of you are going to participate? Yeah, wonderful.
So what did you observe after they did it? Like, what did you see? Was there, like, I don't know, twitching?
Not twitching, more eye contact, actually. One of the things that we're in a pretty tech-saturated classroom, so they're always in front of screens of some sort. And I think part of what this project actually also did was try to highlight for them that from the moment they wake up till they fall asleep, there are always screens in front of them, whether it's their mobile screen, a screen in a classroom, a desktop, or a projection screen. And so to actually have them delete an app or to begin to put the phone away from their body was another good one. You saw a lot more of their eyes. They were looking at each other. And even though they sit right next to each other every day, it was a different experience, I think, for them.
I mean, some of these teenagers told me that they were like, I don't know what this feeling is. It's kind of weird. I was like, yeah, that's being bored. So if you've had a phone your whole life, maybe you don't know what boredom is. Maybe we need to start thinking about things that we took for granted when we were growing up. Now they actually have to be taught. So at the end of the week, we had 20,000 participants. Every state was represented, a dozen countries, Sweden, the Netherlands, definitely. Who else? Slovakia, Israel. 90% said that they cut down on some phone time, but most importantly to me, 70% said that they thought that they had found more time to think. And the project was such a success that actually the book version is coming out in September from St. Martin's Press. So hopefully many more people will be getting bored in the next year as well. So a year later, we didn't know how to follow up with this, right? So we were listening to our audience, because at this point, we're getting emails all the time about the project, and they told us that the next thing that they really wanted to think about was how to deal with all the information coming at them. Listeners like Kelsey, who told me that she was feeling completely overwhelmed. Can we play Kelsey?
I have a terrifyingly lengthy catalog of bookmarks filed under Read Later and an ever-growing list of podcasts I should listen to, books I should read. It's like a different flavor of FOMO. It's fear of missing out, but missing out on content and on knowledge.
So this time we decided to make the project less about your phone and more about the stuff coming out of your phone. We called it the absolutely ridiculous title of Info Magical. But the point was, are there Marie Kondo fans in here? The magic? Okay, yeah, right? So that was the play on that. We wanted to help people focus better and discover the magic of clear thinking. But first, of course, we needed to do some research with the help of our audience. So we asked them, why? Why do you feel so overloaded, do you think? In a survey, listeners told us they love all the information they can get, but 80% of them said at night when they're exhausted, they keep scrolling. You know that feeling when you're like, and you're not even taking in? Why are you even there? What are you looking at? For me, it's like couches on Pinterest, you know? So they said, I don't want to miss out on something that will inspire me. Or I always feel the need to stay up to date because I don't want to be embarrassed in conversation. And this one really resonated with me. I am somehow deeply convinced that I should be able to accomplish more in a day than I would ever expect of another person. I mean, who doesn't want to be inspired, right? Who doesn't want to seem in the know? Who doesn't want to be productive? I want all of those things too, but there is a problem. And the problem is the internet is limitless. Our brains are not. When we overindulge on information, we get something called infomania, I explained to my audience. And Dr. Dimitris Zvirikas told me that we are at risk of becoming digital junkies.
We see that very, very often among people who live in urban areas, in bigger cities, that they're starving for information. They're craving information because they feel that that level of information will actually make them better informed. They're keeping up, with friends and family. We're keeping up because they want to be educated. In reality, what a digital junkie is actually doing is overindulging information, and information that's not actually being stored or said in a meaningful way that can actually mean something and contribute to their level of general knowledge.
So the average American consumes 12 hours of media per day. per day. And Dr. Demetrius Stavrakos estimates that our brain only actually uses or takes in or remembers about half of it. So for this second project, I recommended to my audience, okay, here's what we're going to try. What if we purposely choose to focus on the right information for 1 week? Can we end our FOMO? Can we end our information overload? We asked them to choose one information goal: to be more creative, to be more knowledgeable, to be more up to date on the news, more in touch with family and friends, or more in tune with their self. Who can guess which one was the most popular? Creative. Yeah, everybody in America wants to do a startup or something, so maybe that's the reason, I don't know. And it turns out that there's a neuroscientific word for information goal setting. And those neuroscientists have a name for everything. It's called a schema, and this has been proven to help memory and cognition, and it is the reason why you remember nothing that you read when you're on Twitter. So, the next week, again, it was the same thing. Every morning you wake up, there's a newsletter for you, there's a waiting podcast with something that we want you to do. Day one, the most popular day, was every time called single tasking, right? And we had a very good reason for this. In the lab, they have shown that we're always multitasking all the time, but every time you're interrupted, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back on task. No wonder we feel like we're never accomplishing enough by the end of the day. Here's another crazy statistic. 10 years ago, we used to switch tasks every 3 minutes. Now we switch every 45 seconds. Insane. So, at the end, we had 30,000 participants. 71% said they felt less overloaded. 79% felt that they could deal with information overload better. And I would love to just play some of what they told us too.
Hi, my name's Amanda, and I'm living in Tucson, Arizona. And InfoMagical actually has helped me realize how much I use technology as a way to distract myself from things going on in my life that I really actually need to sit down and process. I had a good cry in the Whole Foods parking lot, but it was something that I needed, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was sitting on Instagram instead.
My name is Brandon, and I live in San Leandro, California. It was really relieving to hear other people having these same problems with attention span and computers and cell phones.
Do it until it's done. That is the essence of what this is all about. This isn't a perfect, it's practice.
Hi, note to self. This is Dave from Shorewood, Minnesota. I did spend more time realizing just how much information and interruptions I have during the day, which I realized I can control myself.
Today was a very good day with French. A couple of magical thoughts came to me, trying to avoid looking at other things which are distracting is like a magic wand. It's sort of like that transformation in The Wizard of Oz when she starts to see everything in color. And you start to recognize what you really, really want and push everything aside with a little bit more aggressiveness because there's purposefulness. And you've been given permission right now through these exercises. This is a gift. See you tomorrow. Good night.
That last woman, so her goal was all things French. She really wanted to learn, she kind of spoke French. She really wanted to learn to speak French. So she only cooked French recipes. She only watched French YouTube videos. She only read French Twitter. And she left me a voicemail every day in French. I do not speak French. So maybe this is the next book. I don't know. But meanwhile, and I would say, you know what? I think information overload has just it keeps coming back to me. All this talk about echo chambers and filter bubbles and fake news. I think people are really struggling with how to deal with information. Meanwhile, though, I wanted to scare the shit out of them with this project, the latest one. It happened last month. I've already had some of you come up to me in the hallway and be like, wow, that was some scary stuff. Yes, but we are going to find a solution. Okay, so the title of the privacy project, it comes from something that researchers call it the privacy paradox. And what it is it's this idea that, whenever you download a new app or you sign up for a new service, the terms of service pop up, right? And you're like, should I read them? Oh, am I giving away personal information? Fuck, like it, you click yes, and off you go, right? It's that moment that you have. And I think a lot of people are starting to question, like, do we really have to feel bad all the time that we use our technology? I want to play you a clip from a listener describing how she feels about Facebook in particular.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I live in Brooklyn. And I use Facebook all the time, specifically Facebook Messenger. I have downloaded the app and used it, and then deleted it, and gotten totally rid of it, and then downloaded it again, and then deleted it again. I've done this about 3 times. And it's mostly because I have a level of unease about how much data I am giving Facebook for free.
Yeah, so this is a truly modern dilemma, I think, that we have. And in our survey of 2,000 listeners that we did, some people told us, yeah, they'd had their credit card hacked or their social security number stolen. Other people said, no, nothing really bad has ever happened to me. I knock on wood, I hope it stays that way. But then there was this group of people in the middle who told us the craziest stories, like one guy who was in a very religious family, and Facebook one day changed its privacy settings and revealed to his wife that he was in an atheist group. She divorced him because of that. Another woman told me that she had surgery to remove her ovaries and then was not happy with the fact that fertility advertisements followed her around the web for the rest of the year. Listeners reported seeing their own emails in WikiLeaks dumps, being followed by stalkers. We didn't hear from anyone at the Democratic National Committee, but I'm sure there were some of them too. So what we came up with was a 5-part plan to help listeners learn more about where their information actually goes when they put it online, to weigh the trade-offs they make when they sign up for something, and then to start making digital choices that they feel align with their values. So day 1 was called What Does Your Phone Know? We showed people how to check the privacy settings on their phones, something actually a lot of people don't even know exists. So this was something we put out on social media, how to actually check your privacy settings and see what apps are accessing data that they don't actually need in order to function. And here is what a listener named Dan Clarkson discovered.
I think the best thing I discovered was that my flashlight app, which presumably exists just to turn on and off the light on the back of my camera, actually had access to my microphone and my contacts and my location. So that app got the X.
Yeah, your app doesn't need, or your flashlight app does not need to know who your friends are, who your family is. And so we sort of explained the business models behind a lot of these apps. On day 5, does anybody know who that is? Yes, nice. Okay, gold star up in the front. It's Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web. On day 5, he joined us to challenge our listeners to write their own personal terms of service. So we created a fill-in-the-blank form online that people could go in, and we sort of, when you hovered over it, it gave you suggestions. And now the idea is that our listeners, here's one person's, now listeners can look at it every time they go to download a new app, and they have that worried feeling about too much personal information being given away. They can coach themselves through how to use their technology in a way that they feel comfortable with, in a way that makes them feel empowered. So over 30,000 people did the privacy paradox. 80% said that they now know how to get more privacy into their lives. But most importantly to me is that 70% are ready to push for their digital rights protection. So you guys are doing it differently here in Europe. The States is kind of behind when it comes to digital privacy. And so we're ready to have that debate, I think, in the US. Because American laws right now protect our privacy in real life, but they do not protect us when we go online, which is worrying since we spend, by estimates, 11 hours a day online. And I think that our listeners are really getting this. So I love this tweet. Sure, yes, I love praise. But what I love about this is this listener says that not only is the series good, but we provided her with simple, fast, actionable things that she can do. And in my view, that is the key to making a difference in our listeners' lives, to keep them coming back and also to tell other people to listen to the show. So the project lives on. Every time there's a new story about Russian hacking, we get many more people signing up for the project. I hope you will join us too. And I want to go back to the Virtuous Cycle cycle of content. I hope you feel that I've given you some ideas or demonstrated some ways that you can get your audience excited and contribute, and ways that you can make a difference in their lives and create a feedback loop for your content, right? The audience is ready to be part of the stories that you're telling, and they can be there in so many different and measurable ways. So I think if you decide that you want to do something interactive, you need to ask yourself two very important questions. How can I help my audience? What do they need? And how can they help me find the answer or solution to that problem? So you can help keep my virtuous cycle going by pre-ordering the book. Apparently that's really important. I don't know why. And you can also find me online in these places. Thank you so much for having me.